This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
I'm James Whittingham, and this is episode 36 of the Clean Energy Show. Brian is on assignment. I've always wanted to say that. It's not true. Brian is not on assignment. I fantasize about sending him somewhere to be on assignment, going to the depths of India, researching how EVs are going there and what the public attitude is. We're years away from that. Brian is not on assignment. Brian has family matters to deal with this week and some work matters which have kept him from co-hosting the show, but he promises that he will be back next week. So I will have a short two-topic discussion by myself this week, just to keep the podcast going, because you need the momentum. It's all about momentum in podcasting. You can't slow down, and to skip an episode would be just fatal. So Brian encouraged me to go ahead today. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. One is a policy in China on gas vehicles for 2035 that is on the surface extremely disappointing and tepid. But when we look deeper, it actually spells the end of the oil industry. And, of course, the big story, after we started recording last week, a few hours later, the videos on YouTube started to surface and on Twitter of full self-driving beta from Tesla vehicles that have the full self-driving option. And keep in mind that all vehicles made by Tesla from the past few years have that option. They have the hardware capable of doing it. You might have the computer have to be swapped out in some older cars, but it's all there now for you to use. So it's a $10,000 option in the States, or it's going from $8,000 to $10,000. And as soon as it came out, or a day later, Elon said it's going up in price because he sees this as worth $100,000. So Brian was thinking about upgrading and wondering, and under pressure, should I do it? I'm not going to spend more than this, so I better make my mind up. However, he did eventually succumb to Twitter comments, Elon did, that said that he won't. Full self-driving is not released in Canada, so in other countries outside the United States, there's only a handful of people right now. So when it does move to other countries, he will up the price by $2,000 American, which is pricey. However, as Elon says, in his mind, the value is $100,000. I have a deposit on a Cybertruck, which I can get full self-driving on for the normal price. Pretty cheap, actually. So hopefully that won't change because of my deposit. However, and I'm not getting the Cybertruck, by the way. There's no way in hell, unless lightning strikes me and creates a gold-producing tree in my backyard, there's no way I can afford the Cybertruck, but I reserved it nonetheless. So if you need a Cybertruck and you're willing to pay a premium, let me know, and I'm early on the list. Not really early, but a couple of hours into the booking, I think I booked. Anyway, so the full self-driving videos were quite encouraging, and hence that's why Brian wanted to go out and buy it. It was like, there's always been this question, can cameras work? Because everyone else is using very expensive LiDAR. So it's a whole different system. You're training a computer to recognize objects by how far away they are, and you're using mapping. But Tesla highly relies on just cameras and artificial intelligence. So a neural net learns how to recognize objects just like your bloody mind does. So if it sees a person walking, or if it sees a person on the sidewalk looking to cross the street and maybe sort of motioning there, they all are learning what all that means and what pylons mean and what poop on the road means and all that. So now, keep in mind, this is beta and it's very early on, but what it does prove is that it will work. And that is a big deal because, like everything else in the clean energy space, anything that works now will be better. So if you can prove that it will work, then it's only going to get better. And what happened, my friends, is within 48 hours, they released an even new update for those full self-driving beta testers. And places where they had to take over from the car, And keep in mind, this is a very dangerous endeavor. You have to not trust the car. You have to be ready to take over. So it's gone through complicated intersections. It's done roundabouts. It's done strange intersections. But sometimes it doesn't get it, and it does the wrong thing. You have to quickly take over. These things were fixed, not entirely, but largely fixed within 48 hours. Now, what happens is you take your car home, and it connects to the Wi-Fi automatically, and it updates gigabytes worth of data every day. So it sees what you're doing. It's training the system. You, as a beta user, or as anyone else, is uploading gigabytes worth of data, and it's training the system. And they say that people don't even have to look at this stuff, even though videos are uploaded as well if you have that option enabled. It's amazing because the computer will fix it. And it doesn't matter what the map says. I mean, I'm sure they will utilize maps in some respect, but they're not dependent on it. So the idea is that these cars can drive in any conditions. And just, the day before it was released, the Washington Post had a piece out with people criticizing, no, you can't use these sensors at night. They're not entirely reliable at night. Well, guess what? People were driving at night. Of course they were. And they can probably drive in snow. And that's probably going to be a harder thing to do. But, these things have dealt with no lane markings, narrow streets with lots of cars on them and pedestrians running around and boulevards and strange things. It's going to take a while. And the question used to be if and when. The if has been removed from the equation. It's now when. And Elon, when they did the full self-driving day presentation, a very long presentation about a year ago, had said that it'll be feature complete by the end of this year, which it is. That means all the features, i.e. a feature going through red light, i.e. a feature turning left, a feature turning right on stop signs, red lights, etc. Well, it's doing well with that. However, I caution to Brian that I have cynicism about the fact that they will never update their hardware. It's inevitable that they will update their hardware. So if you pay a premium for the software, basically you're paying for software for full self-driving, be it 8,000 American or 10,000 American or whatever it goes up into the future. If you cannot transfer that to another car, that's kind of sad. And I don't think they have fully stated whether you can do that or not. And I think Elon is against it, but I think he'll come around on it. So it's been pretty impressive. And the fact, that a car will drive by itself with cameras and AI learning and not sensors. It has radar at the front. Yeah, and here's an example of what we're talking about here, because there's a rumor out now. It seems to be confirmed that Tesla has bought a radar company, because it does use a radar at the front of the vehicle, and the new radar will be twice as long. Whatever length the first one was, it'll be twice the number of meters. So Tesla has seen a need for that, to have a better radar. So yes, I think that with all the learning that will go on with these beta testers, and as they spread it out to more hundreds and thousands of people all over the world, they're going to come to realize that, yes, there is something in the hardware that could be updated. And keep in mind, the computer that processes this is very, very powerful, and they built the chips, the board themselves, and it's inevitable that will become cheaper and faster, like computers do, a couple of years from now, because it's been out for a year. So I anticipate that at the very least, the computer will get better. So it's a question of, do you want self-driving now, and why do you want it? For me, people tell me all the time, they say, Jimmy, I want to drive my car. In fact, that son of a bitch Brian said that to me too. He said, I like driving. The man owns driving gloves. He likes driving. Okay? But now he wants to buy full self-driving. Okay, why? I don't know why. Because it's cool. And it certainly would be valuable. The idea that Elon always touts is that you can come home from work, have your car take you home, and have it go work as a Uber driver by itself, making you money. And yes, you have to clean vomit out of the car, urine and semen stains, no doubt. And maybe you get your seats coated with something, I don't know, or covered in plastic, but your car goes and works for you. And that's why Elon Musk wants to charge $100,000 for the system. Not because it's worth it for everyone as a private individual, but as a business, you're getting a lot for that money. It's a human being, basically a slave that works for free for years, and $100,000 is probably a good deal if you have somebody who will be a taxi driver for many years, then why not? Yes, I understand that. Well, that means, in my opinion, that full self-driving will not be for you and me. It will not be for us to go to the grocery store or to have our hour-long commute in Toronto or New York City or Los Angeles. It will not be for us because it'll be $100,000. And we will want it to do that. We will want it to drive us to work so we can surf the internet or maybe even be more productive and do work things or schedule a babysitter for tonight or whatever we have to do can be done instead of driving. But how many people will pay for that if it's $100,000 eventually? It'll just be for robo-taxis. Yes, you can get a sort of a subscription service they're talking about, and that will probably be $100 to $200 a month is the thinking. So I don't know if I would pay $100 to $200 a month. With more people working at home, it seems like that's going to be even less likely than it was before. So full self-driving is essentially here, and it's going to get better. The question is when. When will it get better? When will it become good enough? How many people, and I'm sorry to say this, are going to die? And people, it's almost certain that somebody's going to die. Even if the car is 20 times safer statistically than a human driver, there still could be the car makes a mistake, and that's going to turn people off. And that's understandable. People will forgive humans making a mistake, humans driving drunk. And by the way, it's too bad. Maybe you could tell your Tesla, I want a trip home from the bar because I'm drunk. How much will that be? You pay your own car $10 to drive you home, like a one-time deal for full self-driving. That seems possible. It hasn't been discussed yet, but it's possible. I mean, I would love to see everybody have full self-driving just for the reason that computers will be safer drivers than humans, and especially when they're drunk, which is a problem where I live. There is a alcohol and driving problem, which kills many people every year in my province of Saskatchewan, Canada. It is an issue, and we had a good year last year, but it seems to be getting worse again this year. So I don't know how the subscription and payment and how all that's going to work out, but I do know that the system is getting better, so it becomes a question of when. So a minimum of 6 months before it gets better. Probably my guess is that a year to 2 years, it'll prove itself, but then the question is how many setbacks will there be? Because if somebody dies, it could be a 2-year setback just on that. But the point is, and for those of you who are longtime listeners to the podcast, indulge me for a second because I want to tell the newcomers why full self-driving is important. It is because the world is moving to a transportation as service model. It is inevitable because it will be so cheap. As a user of full self-driving cars, as a transportation as service, once Tesla or Uber or whoever does it, maybe a combination of two, probably not. There's usually generally only room for 2 software companies. The other ones get absorbed or go bankrupt. So if Tesla is running and ruling the world and it's crawling with self-driving robo-taxis, it will be very cheap. And the idea is that not only if Tesla does it, but whoever does it, it'll have to be electric because you cannot compete with another company who goes electric because it'll be a fraction of the price. And part of that is the fuel. Part of that is the maintenance. And another part that you probably don't realize is the longevity of the cars. Even people who listen to this podcast are probably skeptical about the length of time that an EV will last. Well, Jeffrey Don, last week, as we discussed, was testing batteries that were going for 40 years, 50 years even. So the point is these cars will actually last a long time. Right now, they're talking about 2.5 the lifespan. So if you're starting a company and you're buying a fleet of vehicles and one goes 2.5 times as the other one, and it's the same price, which it will be shortly, or if it is now, not already, then you buy the one that's electric, not to mention the operating cost, because if you don't, the competition will and you will go out of business. So transportation as service will be electric, which will be good for the planet. I think overall it will be very good for the planet. And that's what's important here. More than anything else, transportation as a service and full self-driving and autonomy is important to our planet's future. That's why it's important. So we look forward to that. I don't know when it's going to happen. Yes, it's starting in warm, dry places like Phoenix with GM, not GM, but Waymo, they're already starting down there. I think GM is doing it in California and a couple actually in San Francisco, which is a complicated city to drive in. And Tesla's doing it everywhere in the States. There's no geographic restrictions so far. So I'm very bullish on their ability to do this. I think it's a matter of time. I think there will be setbacks. I think there will be discouraging things that happen, but it has proven that it has hit the ground running, and it will only get better. And if you don't realize that, if you say, well, no, it's not, you can't drive, you can't go to sleep now, you're not getting it. You're not getting the trajectory of things. A lot of what we talk about here on the Clean Energy Show is the trajectory of things. If there's a cost curve that goes down and EVs will be cheaper than gas cars, well, that's important. You don't say, well, they're never, because today they're never going to be. Well, that's not the case. These electric vehicles will last a long time. And you can say, well, James, an electric vehicle is not going to last for 40 years because it'll rust away. Well, it doesn't matter because you're going to have 40 years worth of driving around the clock with some charging, yes, but around the clock as robo-taxis, and that battery will last the equivalent of 40 years of driving. And even then, the hilarious thing is that those batteries are still better than the battery in my 2013 Nissan Leaf. They still have 90% of their capacity. So they're not useless. They just go a little less further. And they're certainly usable in grid storage, even at 50% capacity. So it boggles the mind. People, if you are invested in oil is done. I mean, it's not like it's going to completely go away, but there's no way that the demand for oil is a deal. It's going to go down very soon and never come back. So people like us in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Canada, where we have oil, are dependent on that funding some of our things. So funding a lot of our programs and government's expenses. So it's going to be terrible and it's going to be inevitable, but people, wake up. The future is electric.
The Clean Energy Show wants to hear from you. Contact us on Twitter, Clean Energy Pod, by email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, by voicemail, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Okay, so the other story that I wanted to talk about is China has just announced, they sort of waffled back and forth in their plans. I mean, they're looking at 2060. They told the UN that they will become net zero, and that means that most of the carbon will be removed that is burned, although some of it won't be, and that will be sort of offset by something else, like, I don't know, planting trees or carbon capture, but most carbon will stop being burnt into the atmosphere. Most fossil fuels will be done by 2060. People were hoping for 2050. China is rapidly expanding, and it's still pretty good news because they have targets along the way. They're not like Saskatchewan, where I live, where they said we want to be 50% renewable on our electricity grid, which already has some hydro on it, by 2030, and then not have targets along the way because 2030 is coming fast and they're not doing a whole lot. Well, China has set targets along the way. So what they've done is they set a semi-ban on ICE vehicles. We've talked about California banning ICE vehicles in 2035. There's other countries. Norway is banned it in 2025, and that's about 4 years from now. So 2035, they are banning half of the cars from being ICE vehicles. Okay, let's read this here. It says, as of 2035, 50% of new cars sold in the country will be either electric, plug-in hybrid, or fuel cell vehicles. And then the other 50% of new cars will be conventional hybrids, which still run entirely on gasoline. Now, I have a Toyota Prius, and yes, it has electric mode, and yes, it gains energy back from braking that charges the battery, but ultimately, it only runs on gasoline. Now, if you get a Prius that plugs in, you have a plug-in hybrid, so you have a little bit of range that you can go strictly on electricity. Now, by 2035, a plug-in hybrid Well, first of all, by 2035, all cars will be electric because they will be cheaper and superior. And I know that's hard for some of you to swallow, but 2035 is so far away that we're probably going to start seeing that in 2025. In fact, I would never own a gas car again. They're crap. They're inferior machines and old technology, and I have no desire to do that. I mean, I've had my car is coming up on its 8th birthday when there will be cake. My Nissan Leaf, it is going strong. And I love it, and I haven't spent a dime. I have literally not spent a dime on maintenance. So there's no oil to change. There's nothing to break down. There's no timing belts. There's no spark plugs. There's no mufflers. Nothing. No oil filters. All that crap. Not there. No O2 sensors sensing whether my check engine light is going to come on or not. There is no check engine light. It's just you go, and it's great. I love it. Everyone who has an electric car loves it. Some people, the only people who don't love it are the people who don't buy the proper car for their range needs, and they find out that they're, having anxiety about making it home from a 2-hour drive every day. That's understandable, but we need better education for that. So, yes. Now, here's the deal about China. I think that's still a big hit for oil. If oil is, China is one of the biggest consumers of oil right now, and they were always expecting to grow. It's not going to happen, though, because 50% of the cars will be a plug-in hybrid or electric or fuel cell. I don't really have any faith in fuel cells for cars. It makes no sense to me. It is extremely expensive and pointless. However, a plug-in hybrid will get you to work and back on electricity, and you will rarely, except for long trips, have to use the gasoline part. So that is enormously, right there, that is enormously going to cut the gas consumption, the oil consumption in China. If you cut anything by half, and here's the thing. The standard capital repayment period that investors, financiers, and insurers look at is 20 years. So yes, I mean, even if you buy a gas car today, a brand new gas car, it's going to be useless in 20 years. 19 years. In Canada, we're looking at banning them by 2040. These things are stranded assets already. So if you're building a car company in China and you want to build gas cars, and you're going to be forced to build half as much as them and have them hybrid, which are complicated machines, because gasoline hybrid cars are both a gas engine and an electric car in one. Basically, a small version of you have 2 powertrains in one. That's not going to be able to compete with just electric cars. And some cities in China, like Shanghai, has already banned gas cars entirely. I mean, well, it hasn't banned them, but you have to pay $10,000 for a license plate to have a gas car. And, I don't know why anyone would do that unless you really have a love affair with a certain kind of Porsche or something and you're rich. But yes, a capital repayment in a period of 20 years gets us to 2040, which is past 2035. So nobody is going to be investing capital in ICE engines in China. No one. And that includes the American auto companies. So it's over. It's over for oil. And you have to realize that. Our politicians in Canada and the United States have to realize that. They really don't seem to on the federal level in the States right now. Hopefully that'll change. But the world is changing, and it's changing fast. We started this podcast, Brian and I, 6 months ago. And holy cow, we didn't see things changing as fast as they are. It's all happening before our eyes, and it's incredible. And it's happening faster than expected. And it's only going to accelerate, and it's so exciting to watch. Anyway, I'm James Whittingham. Brian will be back next week, so join us then for another edition of the Clean Energy Show. And remember, everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we've got videos going up over there. And if you can, give us a rating on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. And if you like the show, rate and subscribe and give us a review if you care to. See you next week.